All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Tech Insights. My name is John Hildebrand. I'm a principal technologist with the Technical Advocacy Group. And joining me today is a very esteemed guest. He's worked at Cohesity for quite some time. Mike, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, John. Mike Rowley, and I'm a principal technologist as well, and I focus on our national partners.
All right. So today's topic, we're going to get into files and objects, especially in the days of cyber resiliency. So, Mike, since you've been out in the field and been able to see a lot more from this perspective, what sort of issues are we starting to run into now, especially in the days of rampant ransomware attacks? Are we starting to see that files and objects are becoming more of a target, or are they becoming more of a secondary caught up in the wake of some of these ransomware attacks that are happening out there?
Yeah, well, I think that if you had to pick one app, right, that had its tentacles into every part of the environment for a customer, that's the backup app. So we're definitely focused on the right things as being in a leading backup and recovery software vendor. Underneath that, though, if you look at the data footprint, and I was just looking up some stats, it's still around 80% of the data footprint for our customers is unstructured data. And so, while they're still attacking, I think the one single app that has the farthest reach within an organization, secondary to that is the unstructured data. And phishing attacks are still number one. They're still trying to get into people's personal data or work data with just a simple phishing attack. And what that allows them to do is start to crawl through pretty much all of the accumulated history that people like me save in various spots and see if they can somehow cull, in the business sense, cull business information, things that would be important to the business that at least that they could hold for ransom. So yeah, I mean, if you're building a platform, the number one app that you're going to focus on is backup. And then the second conduit has got to be the unstructured data. So NFS, SMB, S3, that's where the vast majority of the data is for any business is still kept. So that becomes a huge attack surface for the bad guys.
Okay, so in that particular regard, with a lot of these different exposure points, and you mentioned multiple different protocols of folks that are running out there, what is top of mind in your sphere that you would think needs to be protected? And what I mean by this is, what sort of things should we be doing to help protect these particular protocols and all this unstructured data that's out there?
Well, I guess it's going to, when you're talking to a customer, right, they have, I don't know how many tools that they're dealing with. And I think the first thing to do is to at least calm the conversation down. If we walk in and we start talking about, hey, we're Cohesity and we've got the answer, I think that's going to turn off a lot of customers, right? We're part of the answer. We're not the answer. And we have our role to play. So there's a lot of things that our customers are doing. I think the one thing that we can do to kind of calm the conversation down is show them, there's two vectors we're primarily protecting against. One is just platform security. And we have a raft of ways to make sure that the data platform, the Cohesity data platform, is locked down, that there are no backdoors, that you can't drop into command line, execute some simple ninja commands, and voila, you're now into every backup image that the customer has. So I think platform security, and then after that, it's data security, right? So oftentimes it's, you're sitting with a customer and you're talking about, I think, some of the constructs of a phishing attack, credential stealing, how people are getting into the actual network. But, you know, it can be something as simple as a demonstration of when you walk into a conference room at a customer site and they have the employee directory sitting on a conference room table. Well, you can, you know, pick up the employee directory, call John Hildebrand and say, hey, John, we got to reset your password. This is Mike down at the help desk. So just give me your old password. We'll reset. And he'll just look at it as an internal number. Well, physical security, me just walking through the front door is where it starts. And so you try to paint the biggest picture possible, which is physical security to platform security to data security. And then we have a role to fill in there. So whatever threat intelligence that they have in play there, the number of tools that they have there, we have to show them how we integrate with those tools. And that whole integration thing, I think, is a better message for our customers to hear than, you know, hey, just press the big easy button, instant mass restore. Hey, you're back. You know, recovery is months long process. It's not typically an instant mass restore away.
Well, that's true, because in most particular cases, what you have to do is you have to clean the environment first, and
Sure.
cleaning the environment is what takes the time and the effort after one of those particular attacks, unless you've already invested in a side clean room, so to speak, where you can essentially start rebuilding your infrastructure and start rebuilding basically your business from basically these backups in a clean environment that people then can start to access again and get access to applications and start the flow of the business over again.
Right. And we can do that. I mean, I'm sure you've done demos of that, right? Where you can show customers, here, I'm gonna take, here's your list of what we think are good known restore points. Let me pop those up in a clean room and let's do some forensics on that. But that all takes time. But it just, you know, what we've been able to do is kind of block out some of the white noise, and really customers are just inundated with a bunch of false positives. And, you know, how do I get this down to, you know, separating signal from noise? What are my most likely recovery points? Let me learn the forensics on that. Let me show you how I'm integrating with your other alert tools, your other threat intelligence tools. And there are many, but, you know, how do we play our part? What's our role there? And I think when we start talking about how we're a team player, as opposed to, you know, standing on a soapbox and saying, look at me, we're not 4-year-olds out on the playground trying to get attention, right? We're trying to help you get back in business.
Well, that does bring me up to a very interesting point, because you talk about a lot of the integrations, and especially with unstructured data. We like to talk quite a bit how a lot of this data is dark, and that a lot of the data is just accumulated in mass. And in most particular cases, you don't really know what you have back there. So being able to classify that particular subset of data so that you know what you have out there, that seemingly is one of the new features that we're introducing with DataHawk, and being able to work with a lot of utilities that are out there to classify that data, so you know exactly what is in there and what is ripe for exfiltration going forward.
Well, yeah, I guess I could go back to, so when I first arrived at Cohesity, so that's about 5 years ago. I had a chance to sit down with Mohit Aaron, and he explained the vision. And I thought, this is it, right? The vision for Cohesity as providing insights to data. So really, backup was a means to an end, right? It was, if we can get our arms around the data, then we can start to shed light on that data. And now all the stuff that we're starting to realize with DataHawk, being able to classify data, anomaly detection. If you take a look at unstructured data, just getting your arms around that and not bundling it up into an opaque tarball and stuffing it away somewhere is key to our success. But here was the real key, right? Is anybody can build these big gilded buckets of data and pour data into it, unstructured data. You know, NetApp is a pro at that. EMC, Isilon, we've got a number of NAS platforms that our customers currently enjoy. They do good work, right? But then what customers would do is they plumb up third-party servers everywhere and then try to mine that data. So you're trying to push what is terabytes, petabytes of information through a straw these days to try to distill down some sort of pattern or business information that we've lumped into these big gilded buckets. The game changer for me was being able to take that intelligent and move it right next to the data. So that whole idea that Mo had explained to me like 5 years ago was, hey, let's bring apps, let's bring intelligence to the data, because data has gravity. Unstructured data is like barnacles on a ship. We just accumulate it over time until it makes us very slow to react to things, right? Why wouldn't we take compute app services and move them onto the platform and then have them run the analytics? And that's where I think DataHawk is going to shine. It unlocks certainly everything the customers have been asking us for: indexing of data. I can't find this. I need to prep for an audit report. Where am I exposed? All that information is in this big gilded bucket, but it's just a big dumb gilded bucket until you start to add intelligence to it. And that's, I think, the recipe for success for Cohesity. If somebody asks me what sets us apart, that sets us apart. More than, we can talk about these feature matrices. We're the only guys out there that are doing this. And I think when you start talking to customers about how to improve or get their arms around their unstructured data, Cohesity has a unique slant on this, a unique take on this that nobody else is doing or can do unless they re-architect their entire platform. And nobody's going to be doing that. And certainly nobody's going to be doing that when faced with we were talking about it earlier, some of the macroeconomic conditions. You just don't have the time or money to invest to re-architect your platform to do what we're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely a very key point that you're mentioning out there, especially with the macroeconomic conditions that are out there. You've got to squeeze every dollar value that you can out of everything that you currently have, and be able to show business outcomes based off of that in any fashion that basically justifies its existence inside of your data center or inside of just wherever your data footprint exists. So the interesting thing with DataHawk, so we went through classification. What about some of the other capabilities, especially when it comes to ransomware insurance policies and being able to do things like the cyber vaulting capabilities? Those sorts of things out there are becoming more and more necessary for cyber insurance policies to be able to help protect a business in the event that a ransomware attack occurs. So moving forward, what are you seeing as far as traction on the cyber vaulting capabilities, or I should say the Fort Knox capabilities, as far as the platform name is concerned?
Well, it is something that everybody is asking for that nobody has time to construct on their own. So, I've walked out of conferences or conference sessions where the customer that I was with, the partner that I was with, turned to me and said, I understood everything that they talked about in there. I understood firewalling. I understand air gapping. I understand the technology. I just don't have the resources to build it. I don't have the time to devote to it. I need something that provides me that type of capability. And Fort Knox gives them that capability. It allows them to meet their regulatory and compliance obligations with a simple service that they could subscribe to with Cohesity. So it's part of every conversation that we have. And I think it's, if we want to get down into how it actually works, that's always an interesting discussion. Whether or not it works has already been proven. So we have customers working on this with us today that are enjoying this capability today. People are well familiar with air gapping and how it works. I think for customers that are looking to, this becomes more of a business discussion for them as far as how to meet audit requirements, simple cash flow requirements. One of the things that we've tried to talk to partners about is it's not always a technical discussion. When you take a look at the room and your room is directors and CFOs, we can talk about Fort Knox, and we can talk about cyber vaulting, and we can talk about all the cool Jason Bourne technology that you want. But what they're trying to do is become cash flow positive. What they're trying to do is replace maybe aging architecture. Everybody's talking about digital transformation. Okay, well, how do I get there? And occasionally what they'll say to you is, well, I don't have any money for that. I don't have any money to build this stuff. Like, well, it's not free for you to keep the lights on. You are investing money. You are paying for things like software subscriptions. You are paying for renewals on hardware or maintenance agreements on hardware. So why don't we take a look at that, find out what it is that you are paying. Let me show you how to do things like meet your regulatory and compliance obligations with not only maybe a hybrid solution from Cohesity, which includes the ability to air gap things away. You want that clean room, like you mentioned before, John? Let's show you how to do that with Fort Knox. And I can show you exactly how to execute on a technical side while making sure that I free up cash for you, certainly in difficult macro conditions. So when we're talking to customers, when we're talking to partners, I think more than ever in 2023, it's as much of a financial discussion as it is a technical discussion. So when it comes to cyber vaulting, I think you and I could go, especially you, but you could definitely go as deep as they want to go about how to construct vaults, multiple vaults per AWS region, replication. All that stuff is to me, signals from the customer that they like what they're hearing, they want to buy it from us. But at the end of the day, they don't want to do the care and feeding. Not that they don't know how. So it's just they don't want to do it. They want to spend their money elsewhere. And when they say, I want to spend my money elsewhere, then we can come back to them with more of a financial discussion. If our engineers can't do the financial discussion as well as the technical discussion, we're missing half of our audience.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, business outcomes is the generic term that they talk about for those particular the monikers and the dollar signs and everything else that goes with the success or failure of a particular project. But business outcomes are what rules the day, especially as we've already mentioned, and I'll say ad nauseum, with the macroeconomic conditions. You got to squeeze that dollar out of everything that you possibly can. So that does lead me into the fact that you've mentioned before that we're a platform. We started off basically with table stakes in the backup realm. But at the same time, what a lot of customers are starting to realize now is that we can take on those NAS workloads at the same time in the realm of smart files. And what are we seeing out there as far as the conversion of adoption from moving that particular platform to a multi-use platform instead of just a backup platform going forward?
Well, and this is where we got to be a little bit careful because again, we don't show up and say Cohesity is the answer. What was the question, right? It's you want to make sure, especially our tech teams, to qualify it appropriately, because we can go in there and say, this is what we're good at. And what we're good at tends to be the non-SLA type of environments, right? So when you think of unstructured data, everybody immediately jumps to, home directories. Well, that's a question that we could probably research a little bit more with the customer. When you say home directories, what type of data are you looking for to store on us? But we're trying to stay away from anything that is kind of latency sensitive. So the rule of thumb is, hey, if it kind of looks and acts and behaves like a backup environment, that type of data is good for us, right? So, big files, sequential filing, or sequential files, big files, infrequently referenced, that type of stuff. Customers have scores of that. And so we can go in and have those conversations, but here's the problem is customers will see in a shared file system And the great thing about shared file systems, they're easy to use, right? This is virtual storage before virtual storage was cool, right? We're not talking about RAID groups and LUNs and where they are. It's, hey man, here's a big repository. I've allowed you permission to store things in it. And if you give people permission to do that, they will. So shared file systems will develop their own gravitational pull. And we have to be careful about how much they start to suck into that environment, right? How much are people putting in there? We have to make sure that those lines are drawn so that customers have a good user experience. This is what we're good at. This is what we're probably not good at. If you want the low latency, small file battle, let Pure and NetApp and EMC have that knife fight. And then once they're done and you want to archive that data away so that you can have it for 7 years, or in the case of HIPAA, if you've got medical records or medical images that you want to store or archive on us, hey, life of the patient plus 10 years. We'll take that business all day, every day, right? So I think those are the spots where we fit. And again, we have to be very careful, I think, as an organization, because we know customers will see space and fill it up.
Yeah, that's true. All you have to do is take a look at a lot of the cloud providers in the form of like OneDrive, Google Drive. If it can be stored out there, folks will put it out there.
That's right. Absolutely. And then so now you're starting to look at, well, here's another conduit for data, right? Okay. Is that a security risk? Oh, 100% it's a security risk. So again, for us, the DataHawk capabilities, and I guess we didn't do a great job of kind of explaining what that is, but essentially it's allowing us to provide customers with a feedback loop as to what is going on in their environment, right? We're taking data, storing it in a native file system format so that it can be accessed and analyzed. So think of data analytics from a security perspective, classification, anomaly detection. That's what DataHawk's bringing to the table. Now, apply that to shared file systems, and you got a match made in heaven, right? Because you want to make sure that you've got the ability to get your arms around your data. So DataHawk's going to give you that, but you also have to make sure that you're securing that data. So, it's a blessing and a curse. You're going to put all your eggs in one basket. You got to protect that basket. And I think with what Cohesity has done and some of the security features that we've implemented to not only lock down the platform, but ensure that the data is protected, those are the reasons why we're having those conversations up front with customers, right? Hey, security is probably your number one concern before we get any further. Let's talk about that. But at the end of the day, let's show you the business outcomes. Let's assume that we've done as good a job as we think we can. We've met all of your security concerns. Now, how do we help you drive business? I'd much rather talk to a CIO about how to make money than save money. The whole do more with less mantra that CIOs get charged with. I'd love to set up a CIO to walk into that next board meeting and say, we've had several problems with security, and we think we have those squared away. Here's what we've done. Now let me tell you how to sell more, and then whatever it is that they do for a living, right? Let me tell you how to sell more cars. Let me show you how to improve margins on shirts. Let me show you how to just basically drive revenue and margin for our business. That is an entirely different discussion for a CIO to have than when they go around the table and they say, all right, Bob, how are sales look? Oh, sales look tremendous. They're a little flat in last quarter, but we need to do these things to improve it. Then they come to you, John, and you're the CIO, and they just look at you and go, John, how can we reduce costs? And let's just flip that. Let's arm CIOs with the possibility that it's not just a cost reduction conversation every time out of the box. Let's arm them with here's what we're doing to streamline operations. Here's what we're doing to monetize your data. Mm-hmm. That's a tremendous discussion to put in the hands of the CIO. And then, hey, CFO, here's what we're doing to improve cash flow. And then over to the engineering teams. Hey, guys, here's all your threat defense tools that you currently have out there. I see you're working with Palo Alto or your CrowdStrike or whatever it is, whatever the tools it is that they have. Here's what we're doing with those tools to not only integrate, but reduce the number of touch points that you have, right? So, a lot of discussions there. There's a lot of ground to cover, but
definitely.
I think it's a greenfield discussion that anybody within Cohesity can have.
Well, that's excellent. I look forward to continuing to have those discussions with folks internally and externally as we continue on with talking with the security message that we're using as the way to, especially these days. You have to talk security. You
talk security.
Yeah. So, well, any parting thoughts before we wrap this up?
Well, I would say that again, the one thing that I think has been important to customers, and people say, well, what's resonating with customers, is Cohesity has an identity in the market, and we are a premier backup and recovery company. Now, that to me, as I said before, is the means to the end, right? That is the one app that does have tentacles into everything that's important to what you do. On top of that comes the security message. So our identity hasn't changed. I think where I've seen our competitors stub their toe is they'll come into the conversation and say, we were a backup vendor last year, but we're a security vendor this year. And the customer's like, well, I don't get it, right? Are you doing anything different? Yeah, we're talking about security this year. Well, did anything change in your technology? No, but we're talking about security this year. Okay, well then everybody's talking about security. Our identity hasn't changed. We're still the best at what we do, right? And another thing that we are doing is smart files. We can do not only the backup, but the other conduit for information is NFS, SMB, S3, the file system protocols that we support. But our identity hasn't changed. But on top of that, it allows us to talk about security. And maybe, who knows, 2 years from now, the next hot topic is we come full circle and we start talking more about data tiering or information lifecycle management or whatever that topic is. Our identity is the same. You know who Cohesity is. You know what you get when we walk through the door. The fact that we have security conscious capabilities and professionals within our organization, I think just adds to our strength, but it builds on our strength. It's not in place of. It's not like last year we were one thing and this year we're something else. Okay. So that's the one thing I would tell to all the partners, all of our customers. We're walking in the door, we're saying it loud and proud. We're a backup and recovery company, and we have outstanding security capabilities that will integrate into your current threat intelligence plan. Let's talk about how we can complement that and how we can make you successful. That's what I would say to them.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. On behalf of myself and Mike, we thank you for listening to another episode of, or watching, I should say. I'm too used to doing audio only events at this point. But thanks for watching this particular event, and look forward to another episode of Tech Insights with Cohesity. Thank you.
Thanks, John.